Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Rethinking Youth Ministry podcast. Listen, we love getting to rethink things with you. And so we ask youth leaders from all across the country, what are some of the things they're rethinking? Today, we get to hear from Jordan from North Carolina.
Hey everyone, my name is Jordan McLarnon. I am the youth pastor at Renovation Church in Hampstead, North Carolina. And one thing that I've been rethinking about youth ministry lately is large group teaching and communication. Of course, there is always a time and place for one communicator teaching and preaching to many students, but we've been innovating and rethinking new ways to get students involved in the large group communication process through more conversational styles of teaching, such as podcasting. We want to accomplish two things through this. Number one is get students on the microphone. Get them in front of their peers, give them an opportunity to share about how their faith is real to them and how they are taking the timeless truths of Scripture and applying it directly to their lives, which is such an amazing thing. But number two, subliminally through the podcasting, we want to teach the audience and the students involved in listening how to engage in a faith conversation without being weird. We are literally trying to teach them how we want them to participate and be involved in a small group setting and what it looks like to talk about your faith with your friends and your family. We don't have it all figured out yet, but we're innovating and rethinking large group communication and teaching to students using more conversational approaches.
Jordan, thanks so much for submitting that. I think it is fantastic that you're experimenting and rethinking and even looking for opportunities. I think it's really easy to get in our rhythm of youth ministry and not remember that there's chances to rethink some things. And so, Shane, I want to know your response. What are you thinking about?
Yeah, first shout out to the Hamptons. That's where he's from, right? You said the Hamptons?
I don't.
Is that it?
The Hamptons.
He did say Hampton.
Not the
North
same
Carolina.
as the
I think he
Hamptons.
said Hampstead, North Carolina.
Yeah.
But listen, I just want to give him a shout out. I've never been there. Anyways, I think just considering ways to incorporate students in your communication period can be so helpful.
Yeah.
Like, I think we have a responsibility as guides when it comes to that, because, you wouldn't, I don't think it's fair to a student to just like throw them in any space where they're communicating to the masses and they have the potential to accidentally say something heretical or say something that they're going to regret in 30 years. Like, that's, I think, our stewardship in that. But I really do think that Gen Z and Gen Alpha want to hear from their peers. So however we can do that more, I think can be a really, really great win.
Yeah. And it also seems like youth ministry space is what I would call a low stakes rep. Like a high stakes rep is when it's your first time doing something and there's a lot at stake, versus I think in youth ministry, we have the opportunity to give them smaller chances to practice that still matter, but don't come with all these detrimental consequences if you get it wrong, and then you're never invited back again. So I think that's really cool.
Well, can I say something there though? I do think, though, if we put something out on the internet, like a podcast, that could be really high stake.
Yeah, there's
like,
some
even
risk
if it feels like,
involved.
it's our youth ministry, it's like, well, you are putting a student's voice onto
true.
the internet
Yeah.
forever. And so I just think we have to think through that kind
Balance
of stuff,
that,
too.
For sure.
I think what comes to mind for me and what I love about what Jordan was sharing is, like, my background is in education. And so what I'm hearing in that is different opportunities to lean into young people's learning styles and their personalities. So there's some young people that are more extroverted. There's some that are introverted. There's some that learn through conversation. There's some that learn through activity. And essentially what we're doing in youth ministry is we are teaching, right?
good.
And so I think there's excellent opportunity in what he's talking about to leverage what we know about youth development and what we know about how young people acquire information to diversify the experience that they're having in our churches. And so I love that.
I love that.
It sounded like he talked about a lot of, or he mentioned a couple of things like a podcast or having them communicate on stage. I know for some of our listeners, you maybe don't feel like I don't have access to a podcast studio. How do I make this make sense for where I am? I'm curious, Charlie, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think some lower resource churches hear that and they're like, ooh, I can't do that. But you can, because listen, every kid's got a camera in their hand. And I think one of the easy on-ramps for students to do this is grab a YouVersion Bible app on your phone, and there's some really great devos on there, and have a student read those on camera and then give their take, their commentary on
That's
it.
so
Like, how
good.
did this relate to me? It does not have to be a 30-minute podcast.
Right.
It could be 15 seconds, but
Yeah.
you're still allowing a student to speak to a peer that maybe in a situation we may take a different interpretation, but then to hear it through the lens of a 15-year-old, I mean, I think that matters so much more.
Yeah, that's so good. I know a couple of Gen Z who have started, and younger Gen Z, I should say, who have started podcasts just from the voice app or the voice notes app on your phone.
Yeah.
Just record a voice memo with their friends, sew it together, and like put it out. So I think a lot of times when we hear the word podcast, we may go to the furthest, most polished example of something we do here with microphones and lights and producers. But it's also just record your thoughts. I think Gen Z is used to operating in that way anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I think they want that too, though.
Right.
Yes.
Like we know Gen Z and Gen Alpha are showing signs of this. They have a high desire for authenticity, and that's why, like, you know, videos that are a little bit scratchy compared to what we would, you know, highly produce, or audio that may not sound super crisp to us, like millennials that want everything like, oh, at least it looks so nice. Like, that's just their vibe. So I think the more you do that, actually, the more authentic it may be.
Yeah, and I think kind of to your point in terms of giving young people a chance to do low rep practice, and also to kind of lean into giving them an opportunity to not be nervous about the risk.
Yeah.
I mean, you could put some of that stuff on just like an internal
I know.
Google Drive that
Yeah.
just your youth group can access until they start to build their courage
that's smart.
to put some of that stuff out on the internet. That way, everyone in the community is still benefiting, but you're not as nervous about putting your ideas and your thoughts out into the world until you get a little bit more brave.
That's so good. Jordan, thanks so much for sending that in. And listen, if you're listening and you have things that you are rethinking in your youth ministry, we want to hear about it. You can always reach us on Instagram. Just DM us at Orange Students.